The Harrison estate stood like a monument to success against the Wisconsin sunset, its colonial pillars casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Inside, the grandfather clock struck 7, its deep chime echoing through rooms that had witnessed 40 years of ambition, sacrifice, and now perhaps betrayal. Robert Harrison adjusted his cufflinks as he surveyed the dining room. The mahogany table, which he'd bought after landing his first $1 million contract, gleamed under the chandelier's warm light. 24 years ago, Margaret had chosen that chandelier. "It'll outlast us both," she'd said, laughing. She was right about the chandelier, at least. "Julia, careful with that decanter. It's older than you are." Robert's voice carried the authority of a man who'd built an empire from nothing, though his eyes softened as he watched the young intern navigate around the table with practiced grace. Julia Chen, at least, that's what her employment file said, steadied her hands as she poured the 30-year-old Macallan. "Yes, Mr. Harrison, I'll be more careful." Her voice held something Robert couldn't quite place. Nervousness or something deeper. The front door burst open with familiar chaos. Michael entered first, phone pressed to his ear, his voice carrying that edge of perpetual urgency. "Tell them we'll counter at 12 million, not a penny more. I don't care what the evaluation says." He ended the call, straightening his Italian suit. Too expensive for someone who claimed to need a raise every quarter. "Still working on Sunday, Michael?" Robert observed, accepting a glass from Julia. "Your mother would have had words about that." "Times change, Dad. Deals don't wait for family dinners anymore." Michael's eyes tracked Julia as she moved, dismissive. "New staff? What happened to Rosa?" "Rosa's visiting her grandchildren. Julia's our new intern, helping with the dinner tonight." Robert noticed how Julia's jaw tightened slightly at being discussed like furniture. "Interesting." Sarah arrived next, ushering her 2 children toward the playroom. "Sorry we're late. Tom's flight from Chicago got delayed. He sends his apologies." She kissed Robert's cheek, smelling of the same lavender perfume she'd worn since college. "Dad, you look tired. Are you feeling all right?" "Never better, sweetheart." But Robert caught the quick glance she exchanged with Michael. When had his children started communicating in secret languages? David slouched in last, still wearing jeans and a faded Packers jersey. "Sorry, Pops. Lost track of time at the gym." He grabbed a beer from the side table, ignoring the wine Julia offered. "So what's this big announcement? Finally buying that yacht you've been talking about?" Robert waited until they were all seated, Julia standing discreetly by the kitchen door. The weight of his decision pressed against his chest like a physical thing. Outside, storm clouds gathered despite the weather forecast's promise of clear skies. "I've been thinking about legacy lately," Robert began, cutting into his prime rib with surgical precision. "About what we leave behind, what we've built." He paused, letting the words settle. "In 6 months, I'll be stepping down as CEO of Harrison Construction." The silence that followed could have been measured in heartbeats. Michael's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Sarah's wineglass trembled slightly. David actually put down his phone. "You're retiring?" Michael's voice cracked slightly, then recovered. "But you're only 67. You've got years left. The company needs fresh blood, new vision." Robert watched each of their faces, reading them like blueprints. "I'll be choosing my successor from within the family. You'll each have the opportunity to prove yourselves over the coming months." Sarah leaned forward, her motherly concern morphing into something sharper. "Dad, this is sudden. Have you spoken to the board? To James Thompson?" "The board serves at my pleasure, Sarah. This is my decision." Robert noticed Julia had moved slightly, now positioned where she could see everyone's faces. "Smart girl. Michael, you've always talked about your vision for expansion. David, you claim you understand the workers better than anyone. Sarah, your financial acumen is unmatched. Time to prove it." "This is insane," David laughed, but it sounded forced. "We're supposed to compete against each other, like some reality show." "Competition builds character," Robert replied, his tone carrying the weight of decades of experience. "Your mother understood that." A crash interrupted him. Julia stood frozen, the shattered decanter at her feet, 30-year-old whiskey spreading across the Persian rug. But Robert wasn't looking at the mess. He was watching her face as she stared at something in her hand, a cloth she'd been using to clean, now soaked in whiskey. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harrison. I'll clean this immediately." Julia's voice remained steady, but her eyes, those eyes were holding secrets. "It's fine, accidents happen." Robert rose to help, but Michael was already there, roughly grabbing Julia's arm. "Watch what you're doing. That decanter was worth more than you make in a month." "Michael," Robert's voice could have frozen fire. "Release her, now." As Michael backed off, Julia looked directly at Robert for the first time that evening. In that split second, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Those weren't the Chen family eyes. He'd seen those eyes before, 20 years ago, in a Moscow hotel room. "I should go," Julia murmured, But before she could leave, another crash, this time from outside. Thunder, though no rain followed. David's phone buzzed. Sarah's too, then Michael's. They all looked at their screens simultaneously, their faces shifting from confusion to something else. Fear? Anticipation? Everything all right? Robert asked, though he already knew the answer was no. Just a work thing, Michael said too quickly. On Sunday night? Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. Must be important. From the kitchen doorway, Julia watched the family she'd studied for months. The patriarch who didn't know she existed. The siblings who'd already started planning his downfall. And somewhere in the city, she knew her mother was watching too, pulling strings that had been 20 years in the making. The grandfather clock chimed once more. 7:30. The perfect Sunday dinner was over before it truly began. Monday morning arrived with unusual frost for September. Robert stood at his office window on the 25th floor of the Empire Tower, watching the city wake up below. The USB drive on his desk seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. He'd watched the footage 3 times since midnight, his children huddled in his own garage planning his professional execution. Mr. Harrison? His secretary's voice crackled through the intercom. You have an unscheduled visitor. She says you'll want to see her. Elena Volkov from Volkov Industries. The coffee mug slipped from Robert's hand, shattering against the Italian marble floor. Elena, after 20 years of silence, why now? Send her in. His voice remained steady, but his pulse hammered like a pile driver. The door opened, and time folded in on itself. Elena Volkov walked in wearing a black Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her blonde hair, now streaked with premature silver, was pulled back in the same severe style she'd favored in Moscow. But her eyes, those Arctic blue eyes, hadn't aged a day. Hello, Bobby. She used the name only she had ever called him, the one that belonged to another life, another man. You look well for someone whose children are plotting against him. Robert didn't flinch. 40 years in construction had taught him that showing weakness during negotiations was fatal. Elena, I'd say it's good to see you, but we both know I'd be lying. She laughed, that crystalline sound that once made him forget he had a wife waiting at home. Still so American with your directness. May I sit? We have business to discuss. Business? Robert remained standing, forcing her to look up at him. Last I checked, Volkov Industries operated in Eastern Europe, not Wisconsin. Markets expand, Bobby. Ambitions evolve. Elena crossed her legs, a gesture calculated to draw attention. I'm here to make you an offer. $20 million for Harrison Construction. Cash, no contingencies. The company's worth 3 times that. To someone else, perhaps. But you're not selling to someone else. You're selling to me. She opened her purse, extracting a tablet with practiced elegance. Your children came to me first, you know. 2 weeks ago. Michael was quite persuasive. He promised me a quick sale at $15 million once you were declared mentally incompetent. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Robert moved to his desk, fingers finding the USB drive. You're lying. Am I? Elena turned the tablet toward him. Security footage from a Chicago restaurant. Michael, Sarah, and David at a private table with Elena. The timestamp 2 weeks ago, the night Sarah claimed to be at her daughter's recital. They didn't know who I really was, of course, Elena continued, savoring each word like aged wine. To them, I'm just a wealthy investor interested in American real estate. But you know better, don't you, Bobby? Robert's mind raced through calculations, possibilities, strategies. What do you really want, Elena? What I've always wanted. What you denied me 20 years ago. She stood, moving closer, her perfume, the same one, God help him, filling the space between them. Justice. Justice? Robert laughed bitterly. You call destroying my company justice? I call it poetry. Elena's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and wounded underneath. You chose her. You chose safety and respectability and Margaret's old money connections. You left me in Moscow with nothing but promises and She stopped herself, regaining composure. Well, the past is prologue, as your Shakespeare says. A knock interrupted them. Tommy Chen entered without waiting for permission, his laptop under one arm, urgency written across his young face. Mr. Harrison, we have a problem. Someone's been accessing our financial records remotely. High-level breach. It's been going on for... He stopped, noticing Elena. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had a meeting. Tommy Chen, Robert said carefully, watching Elena's reaction. Meet Elena Volkov. She's making an offer on the company. Tommy's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Volkov Industries, the same company that's been buying up distressed properties across the Midwest. Mr. Harrison, you need to see what I found. Elena's smile never wavered. The young man seems agitated, Bobby. Perhaps we should continue this conversation later. My offer stands for 48 hours. After that, she shrugged elegantly. Market conditions change so quickly these days. She moved toward the door, then paused, her hand on the handle. Oh, I almost forgot. Your brother Marcus sends his regards. We had dinner in Sao Paulo last month. He's looking well for a dead man. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Mr. Harrison, Tommy said urgently, pulling up files on his laptop. Michael owes Volkov Industries $2 million. The gambling debt story? It's a cover. These are business loans, personal guarantees he signed. If Volkov calls them in, he loses everything, Robert finished, and becomes their puppet. There's more. Tommy's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sarah's husband, Tom? He's been on Volkov's payroll as a consultant for 3 years. Every major deal we've lost, every contract that went sideways, Tom knew about them in advance. Robert felt the ground shifting beneath his feet, tectonic plates of betrayal grinding against each other. Can you prove this? I can do better than that. I can show you the money trail. Tommy pulled up bank records, shell companies, a web of connections that led back to one source. But Mr. Harrison, there's something else. Something about that woman. Her face. I've seen her before. Before Tommy could continue, the door burst open again. Father Patrick O'Brien entered, his weathered face flushed with exertion despite his 72 years. Robert, my son, we need to talk. Now. Alone. Tommy gathered his laptop. I'll keep digging. But Mr. Harrison, whatever you're planning, be careful. Volkov Industries doesn't just buy companies, they destroy them. When they were alone, Father Patrick collapsed into a chair. His breathing labored. She's here, isn't she? Elena, how did you? Robert, there are things about your past, about your family, that you don't know, sins that predate your birth. The old priest's hands trembled as he pulled out a flask. Irish whiskey. Medicinal purposes only, he always claimed. Your brother Marcus isn't dead. You know this now. Yes? Elena just told me. Marcus disappeared 30 years ago because of what he discovered. About me. About your mother. Patrick took a long drink. Robert, I need you to understand something. Your mother and I. Stop. Robert held up his hand. Whatever you're about to say, I don't want to hear it. Not now. You must. Elena knows Robert. She's known for 20 years. It's why she chose you. Why she's doing this. Patrick's eyes, the same blue as Robert's own, filled with tears. Marcus and you. You're my sons. Both of you. Your mother's husband never knew, but Elena discovered the truth during her time in Moscow. She's using it as leverage. The room spun. Robert gripped the desk for support. You're telling me that my entire life, my entire identity, is built on a lie. I'm telling you that Elena Volkov doesn't just want your company. She wants your complete destruction, and she's using your children to do it. Patrick stood, steadying himself. But there's something she doesn't know, something Margaret left for you before she died. He pulled out an envelope, sealed with wax. Margaret's handwriting across the front. For Robert, when the ghost returns. Robert's hands shook as he opened it. Inside, a single page and a photograph. The photograph showed Elena, 20 years younger, standing next to a man Robert didn't recognize. But the child in her arms, the infant girl with unmistakable features. Dear God, Robert whispered. The letter was brief. My darling Robert, if you're reading this, Elena has returned. You need to know the truth. Julia Chen isn't who she claims to be. She's your daughter. Elena's daughter. I've been protecting her, guiding her, preparing her for this moment. Trust her, Robert. She's the key to everything. All my love, Margaret. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed noon. 6 hours since Elena's visit began. 42 hours until her deadline. And somewhere in the building, Robert realized his daughter, the daughter he never knew existed, was playing a game whose rules he was only beginning to understand. Tuesday morning's emergency board meeting was supposed to be routine. Quarterly projections, contract renewals, the usual corporate theater. Instead, Robert walked into an ambush. The conference room fell silent as he entered. 12 board members sat around the polished oak table, but it was the 13th person that made Robert's blood freeze. A man with silver hair and Robert's own jawline, dressed in a Brazilian-cut suit that couldn't hide the carpenter's shoulders underneath. Hello, little brother. Marcus Harrison smiled, but his eyes remained cold as Wisconsin winter. Surprised to see me? You shouldn't be. Dead men have a way of resurrecting when there's money involved. Marcus. Robert kept his voice level, though his mind raced through legal implications, ownership structures, documents signed 30 years ago. The board wasn't informed you'd be attending. Actually, we were. James Thompson, his CFO of 15 years, wouldn't meet Robert's eyes. Mr. Harrison. Marcus Harrison reached out last week with documentation regarding his ownership stake. 30%, according to the original incorporation papers. Those papers were nullified when Robert, caught himself. When Marcus fled the country after the drug money was discovered. But they'd never filed official papers. To protect the family name, Robert had covered it up, claimed Marcus died in a construction accident. When I what, Robert? Marcus stood, circling the table like a predator. When I discovered our sainted father wasn't our father at all. When I found out our mother's confessor was more than spiritual guidance. Or when you paid me $500,000 to disappear. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. This was family drama spilling into corporate territory, blood on the boardroom floor. We should discuss this privately, Robert said firmly. No, I think the board should hear everything. Marcus pulled out his phone, projecting an image onto the wall screen. This video was taken last week. Your son Michael explaining to potential investors how his father is showing signs of dementia, how he's been making erratic decisions, how the family is considering power of attorney. The video played. Michael's voice filled the room. My father's not the man he used to be. Last month he forgot my mother's been dead for 3 years. He called her name during a meeting. The family's concerned, but we want to handle this delicately. It was masterfully edited. Robert remembered that moment. He'd been looking at Margaret's portrait, murmuring her name while thinking through a problem. Out of context, it looked like confusion. Senility. This is manipulation, Robert said. But doubt was already spreading across the board members' faces. Is it? Sarah entered the room, and Robert's heart cracked a little more. His daughter, his sweetheart, dressed in her best lawyer costume, though she'd never passed the bar. Dad, we're worried about you. This sudden retirement announcement, giving away your position, these aren't the decisions of the man who built this company. You were in on this from the beginning. It wasn't a question. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Tom said, we all agreed that you needed help. Tom said, Robert laughed, bitter as black coffee. Your husband who's been on Elena Volkov's payroll for 3 years? That Tom? The room erupted. Board members talking over each other, demanding explanations. Through the chaos, Robert noticed someone filming from the doorway. Julia, her phone steady, capturing everything. Their eyes met for a split second. Was that approval in her gaze? Enough. Marcus's voice boomed with inherited authority. The fact remains that Robert Harrison has been making questionable decisions. Secret meetings with foreign investors, unexplained financial transfers, and now paranoid accusations about his own family. Speaking of paranoid accusations, a new voice cut through the tension. Tommy Chen entered, laptop in hand, Margaret Chen beside him. We have something the board needs to see. This is a closed meeting, James Thompson protested. Not anymore. Margaret Chen's voice carried the steel of successful litigation. As legal counsel for Harrison Construction, I'm invoking emergency disclosure protocols. Tommy, the young man connected his laptop to the screen, replacing Michael's video with a series of documents. 3 hours ago, someone leaked a video to the press. Mr. Robert Harrison, allegedly in a hotel room with Elena Volkov 20 years ago. The problem is, it's a deep fake. Really good one, but fake. The video played briefly. Robert's younger face, Elena's unmistakable features, a compromising position. Several board members looked away. The metadata's been manipulated, Tommy continued. But whoever did this made one mistake. The hotel room in the video, it wasn't built until 2010, 10 years after this supposedly happened. This proves nothing, Marcus said. But his confidence wavered. It proves someone's trying to destroy my reputation, Robert countered. Someone with access to advanced technology and a very specific agenda. Michael entered then, David trailing behind him. Dad, what's going on? I got a call that there was some kind of emergency. His performance was flawless. The concerned son rushing to his father's aid. If Robert hadn't seen the garage footage, he might have believed it. Michael, perfect timing. Robert's smile was sharp as a blade. Why don't you tell the board about your meeting with Elena Volkov 2 weeks ago? The one where you promised to sell her the company for $15 million. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Robert pulled out his phone, sending a file to the main screen. The Chicago restaurant footage Tommy had shown him. Clear as day, Michael, Sarah, David and Elena, toasting champagne. We thought she was just an investor, Sarah stammered. We were exploring options for the company's future. Behind my back, while I'm still CEO, Robert's voice could have frozen flame. That's conspiracy, Sarah. That's corporate espionage. That's family looking out for family, Marcus interjected. Something you never understood, Robert. You were always Margaret's perfect husband, the golden son who could do no wrong. But where were you when our mother was dying? Building your empire. Where were you when I needed help? Counting your money. I gave you $500,000. Blood money. Hush money. Get out of my life money. Marcus's composure finally cracked. You know what Elena told me? She said you promised to leave Margaret. Promised to start fresh. Then you found out Margaret was pregnant with David, and suddenly Elena didn't exist anymore. The room went silent. David's face had gone pale. What are you talking about? Nothing, Robert said quickly. Marcus is confused. No, I'm finally clear. Marcus pulled out a folder, thick with documents. Motion to remove Robert Harrison as CEO, effective immediately, based on demonstrated mental instability, breach of fiduciary duty, and conduct detrimental to shareholder interests. You need two-thirds majority, Margaret Chen said. You don't have the votes, don't I? Marcus smiled. James, the CFO raised his hand. Then another board member. Another. Robert counted with growing dread. 7 hands raised. Marcus made 8. I'm sorry, Robert, James said quietly, but the company needs stable leadership. The stock has dropped 30% since the news broke about the video. What news? Robert grabbed his phone. The headlines were already everywhere. Construction King's secret affair exposed. Harrison family feud threatens empire. Dementia concerns for billionaire builder. His phone rang. Clients calling to express concern. Investors wanting reassurance. Every ring another nail in his corporate coffin. You have 48 hours to transition power, Marcus said. I'll be taking over as interim CEO with Michael as executive vice president. This is illegal, Margaret Chen protested. The bylaws clearly state. The bylaws are being reviewed, a new voice said. Tom Mitchell entered, briefcase in hand. I'll be representing the board's interests going forward. Sarah couldn't meet Robert's eyes. David stood frozen, confused, lost. Michael's mask of concern never slipped. And in the doorway, Julia continued filming, her expression unreadable as she documented the fall of an empire that had taken 40 years to build and only 40 minutes to destroy. Wednesday, 3 in the morning. Robert stood in his home office, the DNA test results trembling in his hands. The laboratory logo at the top was authentic. He'd called to verify. The conclusion at the bottom was undeniable. Julia Chen was his biological daughter. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't notice. On his desk, 3 items formed a triangle of truth. The DNA results, Margaret's letter, and a photograph Tommy had uncovered from Elena's past. Elena, clearly pregnant, at a medical clinic in Toronto, dated exactly 9 months after their last night together. You always work better in the dark. Julia's voice came from the doorway. She stood backlit by the hallway light, no longer the nervous intern, but something else entirely. That's what Mom said about you. Elena, I mean, not that she was much of a mom. How long have you known? Robert's voice came out rougher than intended. That you're my father? Since I was 15? That's when Elena finally got drunk enough to tell me the truth. About you. About how you chose your perfect American family over us. Julia moved into the room, her footsteps silent on the Persian rug. She raised me to hate you, you know. Every birthday you missed, every Christmas that passed, she reminded me that Robert Harrison didn't want me. I didn't know you existed. Would it have mattered? Julia's composure cracked slightly. Would you have left Margaret and your legitimate children for Elena's bastard? The word hung between them like a blade. Robert set down the test results, really looking at his daughter for the first time. She had his bone structure, his stubborn jaw, but her eyes, those were pure Elena, ice blue and calculating. Your mother never told me she was pregnant. No, she waited. She thought you'd come back. When you didn't, she decided revenge was better than child support. Julia laughed, bitter as burnt coffee. 24 years of planning, and here we are. Your empire crumbling, your children turned against you, and me, the daughter you never wanted, standing in the ruins. But you're not here to destroy me. It wasn't a question. Robert had seen her filming at the board meeting, seen the way she'd positioned herself to capture Marcus's lies, Michael's deception. Elena thinks I am. She sent me here 6 months ago to infiltrate, to learn your weaknesses, to be her eyes inside your walls. Julia pulled out her phone, showing him months of messages to Elena, detailed reports about the company, the family dynamics, everything. What she doesn't know is that I've been playing my own game. Why? Because Margaret found me first. Robert's world tilted. What? 3 years ago, your wife tracked me down. Can you imagine my shock? The woman I'd been raised to see as my enemy, sitting across from me in a Toronto coffee shop, offering me the truth. Julia moved to the window, looking out at the lake. She knew about Elena and you. She'd always known, and somehow she'd discovered I existed. Margaret knew about you. The words felt like stones in Robert's mouth. She knew everything, and instead of hating me, she offered me something Elena never had, a choice. She said I could continue being Elena's weapon, or I could choose to be something more, a bridge instead of a bomb. Robert's phone buzzed. Tommy Chen texting urgently. Emergency. Marcus isn't your brother. Check your email. Now. With shaking fingers, Robert opened the message. Military records, birth certificates, adoption papers. a trail Tommy had followed through 3 countries. The truth was staggering. Marcus Harrison had been adopted when he was 2, after the real Marcus died from pneumonia. Their parents had never told anyone, not even Father Patrick. That's why Marcus hates me, Robert said slowly. He found out he wasn't really family. Oh, it gets better, Julia said, reading over his shoulder. Look at the adoption agency. The signature on the papers. Robert zoomed in. The witness signature was in Cyrillic, but the translated name below was clear. Vladimir Volkov, Elena's father. Elena's known Marcus wasn't your real brother for 30 years, Julia continued. She found him in Brazil, convinced him that you'd stolen his life, his inheritance, fed his resentment until he was ready to destroy you, just like she tried to do with your children. Tried. Julia smiled, and for the first time Robert saw himself in the expression. Michael's gambling debts? Elena created them. Electronic transfers, forged signatures, a paper trail that only exists in Volkov Industries computers. One good forensic accountant would expose it all. You have proof. Better. I have Tommy Chen. She pulled up a video on her phone. Your lawyer's nephew isn't just a computer genius. He's been working with me for months. We've documented everything. Every payment to Tom Mitchell, every forged document, every manipulated record. Robert sank into his chair, overwhelmed. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Because I needed Elena to think she was winning. She had to overplay her hand, had to get cocky. Julia's expression hardened. And I needed to know if you were worth saving. And, the jury's still out. But her slight smile softened the words. You're not the monster she painted. But you're not the hero you think you are either. You did choose Margaret over Elena. You did abandon Marcus when he needed you. You did put the company before your children for years. I built this company for them. No, you built it for you. For the boy who grew up with nothing and swore he'd never be powerless again. Julia moved closer, and Robert could see Margaret's influence in her measured words. But here's the thing, Robert. That's not necessarily wrong. We all build our kingdoms. The question is, what do we do when they're threatened? We fight back. Wrong answer. Julia shook her head. We evolve. We change the game. Elena expects you to fight her move for move. But what if you didn't? What if instead of trying to save your empire, you transformed it into something she could never touch? What are you suggesting? Margaret left more than just a letter. She left a plan. A complete restructuring that would protect the company from hostile takeover, provide for your children without enabling them, and ensure that Harrison Construction's legacy isn't about money, but about what you build for the community. She pulled out a thick folder, Margaret's handwriting on every page. Legal documents, financial structures, a complete blueprint for transformation. She knew this day would come. She knew Elena would never give up, so she prepared. With one addition, me. I'm not just your daughter, Robert. According to these papers dated a year before she died, Margaret legally adopted me in absentia. I'm a Harrison twice over. Robert's phone rang. Marcus, according to the caller ID. Answer it, Julia said. But remember, you're not reacting anymore. You're 3 moves ahead. Elena taught me to play chess, but Margaret taught me that sometimes the best move is to flip the board entirely. Robert answered the phone, his voice steady for the first time in days. Hello, Marcus, or should I say Mr. Volkov? Yes, I know who you really are. And in 24 hours, so will everyone else. Thursday's emergency board meeting was a massacre disguised as corporate procedure. Robert arrived to find the conference room already full, the air thick with anticipation and betrayal. But it was Julia standing at the presentation screen that made everyone freeze. What's she doing here? Michael demanded, his usual composure cracking. She's just an intern. Actually, Julia said, her voice carrying across the room with inherited authority, I'm here as a shareholder. Significant shareholder, to be precise. She clicked a remote and legal documents filled the screen. 3 years ago, Margaret Harrison legally adopted me through Canadian courts. As her adopted daughter, I inherited her 25% stake in Harrison Construction when she passed. The room erupted, board members shouting over each other, Michael on his feet, Sarah's face cycling through shock and rage. Only Marcus remained seated, his eyes narrowing as he recalculated the chessboard. This is impossible, Tom Mitchell said, frantically scrolling through his tablet. We would have known. The will was clear. You mean this will? Julia produced a document. The one filed with the court? Or this one? Another document. The sealed amendment Margaret filed 6 months before her death. The one that names me, Julia Elena Harrison, as her legal heir? Robert watched his children's faces crumble. They'd been so sure of their inheritance, so confident in their birthright. Now a stranger, his secret daughter held more power than any of them. Even if this is real, Marcus said carefully, 25% doesn't give you control. No, but it prevents you from having the two-thirds majority needed to remove Robert as CEO. Julia's smile was sharp as winter ice. Unless, of course, you can convince me to vote with you. How much? Michael asked immediately. What's your price? Michael, Sarah grabbed his arm. You can't just shut up, Sarah. This is business. Michael turned back to Julia. 5 million to vote with us. Interesting offer, but I have a better one. Julia clicked the remote again. New images filled the screen, bank records, emails, surveillance footage. This is evidence of a criminal conspiracy to defraud Harrison Construction. Wire fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage. Would you like me to continue, or should we skip to the part where you're all arrested? Tom Mitchell stood abruptly. I need to make a call. Sit down, Tom. Robert's voice cut through the chaos. Nobody leaves until we're finished. You can't hold us here, Tom protested. Actually, he can. Margaret Chen entered with 2 FBI agents. These gentlemen have some questions about foreign interference in American businesses, specifically about Volkov Industries' illegal activities. One agent stepped forward. Tom Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. As they cuffed Tom, Sarah broke. Tom, what's happening? What did you do? I'm sorry, baby. Elena promised. She said no one would get hurt. It was just supposed to be about money. Just money? Sarah's voice rose to a shriek. You destroyed my family for money. Your family was already broken, Marcus interjected coldly. I just helped speed up the process. Father Patrick entered then, moving slowly but deliberately to the front of the room. Before this goes further, there's something everyone needs to know. He pulled out a folder, hands shaking. Marcus, I'm sorry. Your parents should have told you the truth. What truth? Marcus's voice was dangerous. You were adopted after the real Marcus died. You're not Robert's biological brother. You never were. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's face went through a transformation, shock, rage, then something worse. Understanding. You knew. He turned to Robert. You've always known. I found out today, Robert said quietly. But it doesn't matter. You were my brother in every way that don't. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. Don't you dare play the family card now. You paid me to disappear. You erased me from the company history. And all along I wasn't even real family? The real question, Julia interjected, is how Elena knew, and why she chose you specifically to destroy Robert. Marcus laughed, bitter and broken. Because I was the perfect weapon. The discarded brother, nursing 30 years of resentment. She found me in São Paulo, showed me the adoption papers, told me how Robert had stolen everything that should have been mine. Except there was nothing to steal, Tommy Chen said from the doorway, laptop in hand. I've been tracking the money trails. Elena didn't just manipulate you, Marcus. She destroyed your life first. That woman you loved in 1995, Elena had her killed. Your business in Brazil that failed, Elena sabotaged it. Every misfortune that drove you to hate Robert, Elena orchestrated it all. Marcus collapsed into his chair. No, that's not. She showed me proof that Robert fabricated all of it. Tommy connected his laptop to the screen. 20 years of manipulation documented right here. Elena Volkov has been playing a longer game than anyone imagined. Michael stood up, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. This doesn't change the fact that Dad is unfit to run the company. The board voted. The board was deceived, James Thompson interrupted. Everyone turned to stare at the CFO. I received a call this morning from the SEC. They're investigating irregular trading patterns in our stock. Someone's been shorting Harrison Construction, betting on its failure. Want to guess who? He pulled up trading records. Volkov Industries had positioned themselves to make $50 million if Harrison Construction collapsed. She never wanted to buy the company, Robert said slowly. She wanted to destroy it and profit from the destruction. More than that, Julia added. She wanted to destroy you the same way she felt you destroyed her. Abandoned by family, betrayed by those you trust, left with nothing but ashes. Sarah finally spoke, her voice small. Dad, we didn't know. Michael said you were going to give everything to charity, that we'd be left with nothing. Tom said if we didn't act. Tom lied. Michael lied. And you chose to believe them over me. Robert's voice was tired. Decades of exhaustion in every word. 40 years I built this company. Not for me. For you. For all of you. And you couldn't wait 6 months to see what I'd planned. David, who'd been silent through everything, finally stood. I want out. All of it. The money, the company, the lies. I'm done. He looked at Robert. I'm sorry, Dad. I got caught up in their plan because I was scared of being left behind. But I can't do this anymore. Sit down, David. Michael snapped. We're family. We stick together. Family. David laughed. Look around, Michael. Our family is a crime scene. Mom's dead and we're picking over her bones like vultures. The FBI agent cleared his throat. We need Michael Harrison and Sarah Mitchell to come with us for questioning. What? No, Sarah pulled away as they approached. I didn't do anything illegal. Tell them, Dad. Tell them I'm innocent. Robert met his daughter's eyes, seeing the little girl who used to call him Daddy, who believed he could fix anything. I can't tell them what I don't know, Sarah. You made your choices. As the agents led his children away, Robert stood alone at the head of the table. His empire hadn't fallen to external enemies or market forces. It had been hollowed out from within, by the very people he'd built it for. Julia approached him quietly. It's not over, Elena's still out there. Let her come. Robert's voice was steel-forged in loss. I've lost everything that mattered. What more can she take? That's the thing about hitting bottom, Julia said, placing a hand on his shoulder, the first physical contact between them. The only direction left is up, and now we rebuild. Together. Outside, thunder rolled across Lake Mendota, and the first drops of an autumn storm began to fall. Friday morning arrived with unexpected clarity. The kind that comes after storms wash the world clean. Robert stood in his empty office, boxes packed, security waiting to escort him out. But Julia walked in with something that changed everything. A USB drive and a smile that reminded him painfully of Margaret. Before you leave, you need to see this. She plugged the drive into his computer and Margaret's face filled the screen. His wife recorded just weeks before the cancer took her, looking directly at the camera with those knowing brown eyes. Hello, Robert. Margaret's voice filled the room, warm and steady despite the illness evident in her thin face. If you're watching this, then Elena has made her move, and our children have disappointed us both. Don't blame them too harshly. They're human, and humans are weak when faced with fear and greed. Robert sank into his chair, unable to look away. I need you to know that I've always known about Elena, about that week in Moscow when you thought I was visiting my sister. I hired a private investigator, not because I didn't trust you, but because I saw how you looked when you came back. Like part of you had died. The video continued. I also know about Julia. I found her 5 years ago, living in Toronto, working 3 jobs to pay for college because Elena spent all their money on revenge plans. Can you imagine? This brilliant girl, our daughter, struggling while we lived in luxury. You knew she was mine? Robert whispered to the screen. As if anticipating the question, Margaret continued. The moment I saw her, I knew. She has your stubbornness, your intelligence, but also something else, my pragmatism. That's why I chose her, Robert. Not Michael with his greed. Not Sarah with her insecurity. Not David with his laziness. Julia. The daughter you never knew, raised by your enemy, but somehow still carrying the best parts of both of us. Julia paused the video. There's more, but first you need to know what's been happening while you were being arrested and released. Tommy and I have been busy. She pulled up financial records on the screen. Elena made one crucial mistake. She registered Volkov Industries in Delaware, thinking it would protect her. But Delaware requires disclosure of criminal convictions. Elena never disclosed her conviction in Russia 20 years ago. What conviction? Embezzlement from her own father's company. He covered it up, but the records still exist. Tommy found them buried in Moscow court archives. One phone call to Delaware's Secretary of State, and Volkov Industries loses its corporate status. Every contract becomes void, including the shorts against Harrison Construction. Robert's mind raced through the implications. That's $50 million in losses for her. 70 million, actually. She leveraged everything. Julia's smile turned predatory. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember Marcus? He's been calling me all night. Seems he's had time to think about what Tommy revealed. About Elena orchestrating his misery. She played a voicemail. Marcus's voice broken and raw. Julia, I know you have no reason to help me, but I need to make this right. Elena has been playing me for 20 years. I have recordings of our conversations, emails, everything. She confessed to killing Anna in Brazil. She laughed about it. Please, I need to see Robert. I need to make this right before it's too late. He could be lying, Robert said carefully. He's not. Father Patrick entered, moving slowly but with purpose. I've been with him all night. Confession is good for the soul, and Marcus has quite a lot to confess. But more importantly, he has evidence that could bury Elena permanently. Tommy Chen burst in, laptop under his arm, electricity in his movements. It worked. The virus I planted when they arrested me. It's been transmitting everything from Volkov's servers. Financial records, emails, even Elena's personal files. You're not going to believe what I found. He pulled up a document on screen. This is Elena's real plan. She never wanted just to destroy Harrison Construction. She wanted to build her own empire on its ashes. She's been secretly buying land around every one of your major projects, waiting for the company to collapse so she could buy the projects cheap and complete them herself. She wanted to become me, Robert said slowly. No, Julia corrected. She wanted to become better than you, to prove that she should have been your choice all along. Sarah's voice came from the doorway. Dad! Everyone turned. Sarah stood there, no longer in custody but wearing an ankle monitor. David was beside her, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. What are you doing here? Robert's voice was carefully neutral. Our lawyers got us released. Tom took a deal. He's testifying against Elena in exchange for minimum security. Sarah's voice broke. Dad, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid. Tom played me for years, and I let him because I was angry. Angry that you loved the company more than us. I loved the company because of you. No, Dad, you loved building things. We were just the excuse. But Sarah's voice held no anger now, just sad understanding. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we all build our kingdoms different ways. I built mine around my children. Michael built his around his ego. David never built anything because he was afraid of failing. David spoke up. I want to learn, from the bottom. No shortcuts. No family privileges. Let me earn my place. It might be too late for any of that, Robert said. The board has been calling me all morning, Julia interrupted. Seems they've had a change of heart since Tom's arrest and Marcus's confession. James Thompson personally called to apologize. He wants to reinstate you immediately. But I don't want to be reinstated. Robert stood, looking out at the city he'd helped build. Margaret was right. It's time for something new. He turned to Julia. You said she had a plan. Julia smiled and restarted Margaret's video. Margaret's image continued. Robert, by now Julia has shown you the restructuring documents. Harrison Construction will be transformed into a hybrid model, part private company, part community trust. 50% remains with the family, but the other 50% goes to the Harrison Foundation, dedicated to building affordable housing, schools, and hospitals. The family 50% will be divided equally among all 4 children. Yes, Robert, I'm including Julia. She's earned it more than the others, but there are conditions. Each child must work in the company for 5 years, starting from entry level to receive their inheritance. No shortcuts, no nepotism. They earn it or they lose it. Robert looked at his children, all 4 of them now. You'd all agree to this? Michael's voice came from the doorway, accompanied by a guard. He was in handcuffs but had been brought for the meeting. Do we have a choice? It's this or nothing, right? It's this or you're on your own, Robert confirmed. Then yes, Michael said quietly. I've had 2 days to think in a cell. 2 days to realize what I threw away for money that was never real. Elena created those debts to control me, but I let her because I wanted the easy path. I'm done with easy. Tommy's laptop beeped urgently. We have a problem. Elena just landed at Chicago Executive Airport. Private jet, diplomatic passport from Russia. She's coming here. Let her come, Robert said. Julia, make the announcement. What announcement? The press conference. It's time to flip the board, as you said. Within an hour, the Harrison construction lobby was packed with reporters. Robert stood at the podium, his 4 children behind him. Even Michael, released temporarily for the announcement. Julia had prepared everything perfectly. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert began, his voice carrying the authority of 4 decades in business. Today, I'm announcing a fundamental transformation of Harrison Construction. Effective immediately, we're establishing the Harrison Community Partnership, a revolutionary model for corporate responsibility. He explained the structure, the community trust, the requirements for his children. But the real shock came at the end. Furthermore, I'm announcing that Julia Harrison, my daughter and Margaret's adopted daughter, will serve as interim CEO while I chair the Transformation Committee. She has the full support of the board and the family. The reporters erupted with questions, but Robert wasn't done. One more thing. We're also announcing the acquisition of all assets belonging to Volkov Industries, which lost its corporate status due to undisclosed criminal activity. The acquisition price $1. Elena's scream of rage could be heard from the street. She burst through the security line, her perfect composure finally shattered. You can't do this. I'll destroy you. I'll spurst Miss Volkov. An FBI agent stepped forward. You're under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud and murder for hire in the death of Ana Santos in Brazil. You have the right to remain silent. As they dragged Elena away, she locked eyes with Julia. You were supposed to be my weapon. I was, Julia replied calmly. Just not aimed at the target you chose. The lobby fell silent except for the clicking of cameras. Then David started clapping, slowly. Then Sarah joined. Even Michael in his handcuffs managed to applaud. The reporters, the employees, everyone joined in. But Robert only had eyes for the portrait of Margaret hanging in the lobby. Somehow he could swear she was smiling. Your move, Elena, he whispered. But the game was already over before you started playing. Margaret saw to that. Father Patrick stepped beside him. She loved you all, you know. Even Julia, whom she barely knew. She said the greatest gift she could give was bringing her family together, even if she wouldn't be here to see it. She is here, Robert said quietly. In every plan, every detail. Every second chance. She's here. 6 months had passed since Elena Volkov's arrest, and spring was painting Wisconsin in shades of renewal. Robert stood at the construction site of the Margaret Harrison Memorial Hospital, watching David operate an excavator with the precision of someone who'd earned his calluses honestly. His youngest son had started as a laborer, refusing any shortcuts, and the crew's respect for him was genuine now. He's gotten good, Julia observed, joining Robert at the fence. She wore a hard hat and steel-toed boots, her CEO attire adapted for site visits. Martinez says he's ready for the supervisor exam. Let him take it when he thinks he's ready, not before. Robert watched David guide the massive machine with careful concentration. He needs to know he earned it. Like you did? Robert smiled at his daughter, still strange to think of her that way, yet somehow natural. I had advantages David doesn't. Desperation is a powerful teacher. So is redemption. Julia pulled out her tablet, showing him the quarterly reports. We're up 12%. The community trust model is attracting contracts we never could have landed before. Turns out companies like partnering with businesses that give back. Margaret always said conscience and profit weren't mutually exclusive. Robert traced his finger across the screen, reviewing the numbers. How's Michael? Julia's expression softened slightly. He's adjusting. 3 years is a long time, but the minimum security facility has a work program. He's teaching financial literacy to other inmates. The irony isn't lost on me. He writes to me sometimes, asks about you, but never directly. I think he's ashamed. He should be. Robert's voice held no anger, just sadness. But shame can be the beginning of wisdom. God knows I've had my share. A commotion at the site entrance drew their attention. Sarah arrived with her 2 children, now regular visitors to their grandfather. But today she wasn't alone. Tommy Chen walked beside her, their hands casually intertwined in a way that suggested new love finding its footing. Still weird seeing them together, Julia murmured. Tom's betrayal cut deep. She needed someone who understood the scars. Robert waved as his grandchildren ran toward him. Besides, Tommy's proven himself. That virus he planted in Volkov's systems didn't just save the company. It exposed an entire network of corporate espionage. 8-year-old Emma reached him first, throwing her arms around his waist. Grandpa, Mom says we're having dinner at the lake house tonight. Will you tell us stories about Grandma? Always, sweetheart. Robert lifted her up, surprised he still could. But first, want to see Uncle David drive the big machines? As the children pressed against the fence, fascinated by the construction ballet, Sarah approached her father cautiously. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. If it's about you and Tommy, I already... No, not that. Sarah pulled out an envelope, aged and yellowed. I was going through Tom's things. The lawyers said I could claim abandoned property after the divorce finalized. I found this. It's addressed to you from Mom. Tom must have intercepted it somehow. Robert's hands trembled as he took the letter. Margaret's handwriting, dated a month before she died. I'll give you privacy, Sarah said, but Robert caught her hand. No, we're done with secrets in this family. He opened the letter, reading aloud. My dearest Robert, if you're reading this, then my plan worked, and our family has been tested and reformed. I know about Julia because Elena contacted me 15 years ago, trying to use her as leverage. Instead, I saw an opportunity for redemption, not just yours or Elena's, but our entire family's. I chose not to tell you because you would have tried to fix it immediately, throwing money at the problem like you always do. But some things can't be bought. They must be earned, learned, and lived. Julia needed to find her own strength, not be rescued. Our children needed to lose everything to understand what truly mattered. You needed to face the consequences of choices made in passion and learn that love isn't possession, it's release. I'm not angry about Elena. How could I be? That week in Moscow gave us Julia, and she's remarkable. I've watched her from afar, guided her when I could, and I see in her the best of you without the wounds that drove you to build walls instead of bridges. The company will survive because it was built on solid foundation. The family will survive because love, real love, endures betrayal and disappointment. And you, my stubborn, brilliant, infuriating husband, will survive because you're stronger than you know. Build the hospital, Robert. Build the schools. Build the homes for families just starting out. But most importantly, build relationships with all 4 of our children. Yes, all 4. Julia is ours now, in every way that matters. I loved you from the moment you walked onto my father's construction site, cocky and desperate and determined to prove yourself. I love you still, beyond death, beyond betrayal, beyond forgiveness. Be happy, my love. That's not a request. It's an order from the only boss you ever truly answered to. Forever yours, Margaret. Silence fell over the group. Even the construction noise seemed to fade. Sarah was crying quietly. Julia stood frozen, her composed mask cracking. Tommy had moved away, giving the family space. She knew everything, Sarah whispered, and she loved us anyway. That's what mothers do, Robert said, folding the letter carefully. They love us not despite our failures, but through them. David had noticed the gathering and shut down the excavator. Jogging over. His work clothes were dusty, his face sunburned, but he looked healthier than Robert had seen him in years. Everything okay? David asked, then saw the tears. What happened? Mom happened, Sarah said, laughing through her tears. Even from beyond, she's still fixing us. Speaking of fixing things, Julia said, composing herself with visible effort. There's someone here to see you, Robert. A black town car had pulled up to the site. Marcus emerged, older and grayer than 6 months ago, wearing a simple suit instead of his usual designer labels. He walked slowly, like a man approaching judgment. Hello, Robert. His voice carried none of its old arrogance. Thank you for agreeing to see me. You testified against Elena. That bought you this conversation. Robert's tone was neutral, giving nothing away. I did more than that. Marcus pulled out a thick folder. I've spent 6 months tracking down every person Elena and I hurt in our vendetta against you. This is a list of restitutions I've made. Construction companies we sabotaged. I've paid damages. Employees we got fired. I've set up a compensation fund. Money doesn't erase the past, Marcus. No, but it's a start. Marcus looked at the construction site. The workers, the family gathered around Robert. I spent 30 years hating you for having what I thought was mine. But it was never mine, was it? I wasn't even really a Harrison. You were my brother, Robert said firmly. Blood or not, you were my brother. Until you chose not to be. I know, and I can't undo that choice. But I can make a different one now. Marcus pulled out another document. I'm leaving for Brazil tomorrow. Permanently. But before I go, I'm signing over my entire estate to the Harrison Foundation. $40 million. That's everything you have. No, it's everything Elena gave me. Poison money from a poisoned relationship. Marcus met Robert's eyes. I'm starting over. Really starting over. I got a job with a small construction firm in Sao Paulo. Entry level, like David. If he can do it at 35, I can do it at 70. Robert extended his hand. Marcus took it, and for a moment they were young men again, building their first project together, before ambition and betrayal carved canyons between them. Good luck, Marcus. You too, little brother. Marcus smiled sadly. You know, Margaret visited me once in Brazil. Never told you, did she? She said forgiveness wasn't about the person who wronged you. It was about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. Took me 20 years to understand what she meant. As Marcus's car pulled away, Father Patrick arrived, moving slowly but steadily with his walker. Was that Marcus I saw leaving? He's going home, Robert said simply. To start over. We all deserve second chances. Some of us even get them. Patrick blessed himself, then looked at the assembled family. Speaking of which, I have something to tell you all. My own confession, you might say. Patrick, you don't have to. Yes, I do. The old priest's eyes were clear and determined. Robert, Marcus, you deserved the truth long ago. I was young, your mother was lonely. Your father was absent. What we did was wrong, but I can't regret it because it gave the world you two. You built empires, both of you, in your own ways. Did Mom know? Robert asked. At the end, did she know you were our father? She knew, she forgave, she even laughed about it once. Said it explained your stubborn streak. Patrick smiled. She also said I was the one man who could never abandon you, bound as I was by guilt and love in equal measure. The construction site whistle blew, signaling shift change. Workers began gathering their tools, heading home to families and Friday night plans. But David stayed, talking with his crew, making plans for Monday's work. He's found his place, Julia observed. You all have, Robert replied, looking at each of them. Sarah's running the foundation with more passion than she ever showed for anything else. You're transforming the company into something Margaret would be proud of. David's learning what it means to build rather than inherit. Even Michael in his cell is finally learning to teach instead of take. And you, Julia asked. What about Robert Harrison, the man who built an empire? What's your place now? Robert considered the question as the sun began its descent toward Lake Mendota, painting the construction site golden. I'm a teacher now. Margaret left me one last construction project, rebuilding this family. And unlike buildings, families are never really finished. They just keep growing, changing, evolving. Tommy and Sarah had wandered over to the lake's edge with the children, pointing at ducks and laughing at something Tommy said. It was such a normal scene, yet 6 months ago it would have been impossible. I need to tell you something, Julia said suddenly. About Elena. She's sick. The prison called yesterday. Cancer, stage 4. She's asking to see me. Will you go? I don't know. She raised me to be a weapon, used me, lied to me, tried to destroy the only real family I've ever known. Julia paused. But she's also my mother, the only one I knew for 24 years. Margaret would tell you to go, Robert said with certainty. She'd say hatred is a prison you build for yourself, and forgiveness is the key. What would you say? Robert thought of Elena, of Moscow, of choices made in passion and their decades-long consequences. I'd say that empires aren't built on perfect foundations. They're built on learning from our cracks, reinforcing our weak points, and sometimes knowing when to tear down and rebuild completely. His phone buzzed. A text from Michael sent through the prison's communication system. Dad, I know I have no right to ask, but would you visit? I have something important to tell you, about Mom. Something she told me before she died. Robert showed the message to Julia. What do you think? I think Margaret's still building bridges, even now. Julia smiled, and for the first time Robert saw neither Elena's calculation nor his own stubbornness in her expression. He saw Margaret's wisdom. We should go. Both of us. Tomorrow. As the sun set over the lake, the Harrison family, fractured, reformed, and stronger for the breaking, gathered at the construction site. Sarah called them over to see something the children had found. A time capsule, buried when the ground was first broken for the original Harrison construction building, 40 years ago. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a photo of Robert and Margaret on their wedding day, a silver dollar from the year the company was founded, and a handwritten note in Robert's younger script. For whoever finds this, know that everything built here was built for love. David laughed. You were such a romantic, Pops. Was? Robert pulled all four of his children into an embrace, something he'd never done when they were younger, when he was too busy building his empire to build his family. I still am. Just took me 40 years to remember what I was supposed to be romantic about. Father Patrick raised his hand in blessing over the assembled group. What God has brought together through trials, let no one tear asunder through ease. Amen, they said together. Even Julia, who'd never been religious but understood the power of ritual and belonging. As they walked toward the lake house for dinner, Robert hung back, looking at the construction site one more time. Tomorrow, work would continue. The hospital would rise, floor by floor. The foundation would help families. The company would thrive under Julia's leadership, and his children would continue their journeys of redemption and growth. But tonight, for the first time in 40 years, Robert Harrison wasn't thinking about building anything. He was thinking about Margaret's letter, about forgiveness, about the empire that truly mattered, the one built not of steel and concrete, but of second chances and stubborn love. Elena was wrong. She hadn't destroyed his empire. She'd helped reveal its true foundation, one that no amount of betrayal could shake. Family, complicated and messy and imperfect, but family nonetheless. You coming, Dad? Sarah called from the path ahead. Yeah, Robert called back, taking one last look at the sunset reflecting off the lake. I'm coming home. As he walked toward his family, he could almost hear Margaret's voice on the wind. Well done, my love. The empire stands. And it did. Different than before, scarred in places, rebuilt in others, but standing. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Not because it was unbreakable, but because when it broke, they chose to build it back, together. The Harrison Empire would continue, not as a monument to one man's ambition, but as a testament to the power of redemption, the strength of forgiveness, and the enduring nature of love, even when that love has to survive betrayal, loss, and the painful truth that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who wound us deepest. But perhaps that's what Margaret knew all along. That real strength isn't in never falling, it's in how we rise, who we lift with us, and what we choose to build from the rubble of our broken dreams. The empire stands, not perfect but whole, not unscarred but healed, and in the end that's all any of us can hope for, to build something worth saving, and to have the wisdom to know when to fight for it, and when to let it transform into something better than we ever imagined.